Back at it again with another video. Thank you all for watching. I greatly appreciate it. So, I've been doing a handful of videos lately about countries I think that should develop nuclear weapons programs. So this video is all about Ukraine. So, as we're all aware, there is a war going on between Russia and Ukraine, and I'm pretty sure the Ukrainians at this point would really like to have some nuclear weapons as an insurance policy, to ensure that the Russians never invade again. I am a firm supporter of Ukraine. I know they're going to win the war because they are, amazing warriors and incredible soldiers and a resilient people. Once they win the war, I think they should develop a nuclear weapons program as a deterrent to make sure the Russians never invade again. So I've been doing a handful of videos. This is the fourth one in the series. This one's about Ukraine. The last one I did was about Poland as a deterrent, why South Korea should, to counterbalance North Korea, and why Taiwan should to counterbalance and to deter China. So Taiwan was video number 1, South Korea was video number 2, Poland was video number 3, and why I think Ukraine would be smart to develop nuclear weapons as a deterrent to make sure that the Russians never invade again. So, we go to Google Maps. We were zoomed in on the Middle East, but we look at Europe as a whole. So, the current nuclear powers in Europe, the UK, France. I did a video on why Poland would be good. Germany has the technical capacity to build nuclear weapons, but I don't think that's a good idea. Given their recent history, you can't trust the Germans with any kind of bomb of that capacity. That's not a good idea at all. But I think Poland would be good because you have this border with Belarus, the Russian enclave here of Kaliningrad. The Russians and the Poles don't like each other, and the Poles have every reason to distrust the Russians because the Poles have been partitioned between the Germans, the Austro-Hungarians, the Russians for the past couple of centuries. And I think Poland would be wise to develop a nuclear weapons program because, if they want to do that, that would be an insurance policy to make sure that nobody partitions them ever again, and that they are, their integrity is respected. Currently, the Russians are not respecting Ukrainian integrity, territorial integrity. Invaded Crimea, 2014, the Donbass wars, full-scale invasion from Belarus. And if Ukraine had weapons of mass destruction, had a couple of nuclear weapons at their disposal, the Russians probably, most definitely, would have thought twice and thought long and hard of invading Ukraine. Now, it sounds crazy, but Ukraine actually did have nuclear weapons at a time. USSR was the thing back in the day, from the 1920s to when it collapsed in 1991. So nuclear weapons were a part of the Soviet Union in areas. Ukraine was a part of it, but the former Soviet Union had its nuclear program expanded to 4 republics: Belarus, Kazakhstan, Russia itself, and Ukraine. And then after the dissolution of the Soviet Union, Ukraine became the 3rd largest nuclear power in the world and held about 1/3 of former Soviet nuclear weapons. The weapons themselves, the delivery system, the means of its design, knowledge, and production. They inherited about 130 ICBMs, different, looks like rail or silo launched ICBMs, and with bombers as well. Now, they did not have the ability to get the launch codes, so ultimately they were like, well, if we don't have the launch codes, then they're kind of useless. So, the removal of the weapons, That was done with I think it was called the Budapest Memorandum. Yeah, December 1994. Ukraine, Russia, Britain, and the U.S. signed a memorandum to provide Ukraine with security assurances. The Russians went back on those security assurances. Last time I checked, if this map pulls up correctly, they invaded Ukraine. So did Russia respect the Budapest Memorandum? Did the Russians respect Kiev and the Ukrainian territorial integrity? No, they did not. So Ukraine wants to ensure that they never get invaded again by the Russians. Then weapons of mass destruction is not that crazy of an idea. Because at one point, not in the so distant past, they were the third largest nuclear power in the world. So Ukraine is not new to this idea of nuclear weapons. And on April 15th, 2021, Ukrainian ambassador to Germany told the radio station that if Ukraine was not allowed to become a NATO member, his country might have to, quote, reconsider its status as a non-nuclear weapon state to guarantee its defense. In February 2022, Zelensky renewed sentiment suggesting Ukraine would, quote, potentially view the Budapest Memorandum as invalid should its security assurances not be met. Well, I hate to break it to the Ukrainians, but their security assurances weren't met. The Russians invaded. The Russians didn't respect their integrity. I think this is not a crazy idea. The Ukrainians should definitely, quote, reconsider its status as a non-nuclear weapon state and suggest that the memorandum is invalid, because it is quite invalid, because the Russians did invade. I highly recommend this as a possibility. It sounds crazy, but until you think about it deeper, you realize, oh, this is actually not a terrible idea. If Ukraine wants their territorial integrity respected, then developing insurance policy of nuclear weapons is not a bad idea after all. Again, on the surface it sounds crazy, but if you think about it long and hard, you realize it's not that hard. Not that hard to conceptualize, not that hard to think about, because Ukraine at one point did have nuclear weapons and are not new to this kind of stuff. Ukraine, like Poland, has been partitioned and annexed and gobbled up by foreign powers for centuries. And that's why I think Poland, and that's why I think Ukraine, should seriously consider and reconsider the development of nuclear weapons to ensure their territorial integrity is respected. With that being said, that is the end of the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Deuces.